All right, hello everyone. This is Ken Thompson. I am going to be delivering a demo in Construct3 today. This is for Intro to Game Design, DMD 2500. So follow along. We're going to be using Construct3, and our goal for today is we are going to be creating a Mario 1-1, World 1-1 clone. And specifically, we're going to use open source assets so we don't get sued. And the resources that we're going to use is a resource pack from Kenny's Art Assets. We're going to be using the Platformer Art Deluxe resource pack. You can find this on Kenny, KENNEY.NL, and /assets/platformer-art-deluxe. This is a free art asset pack to download. We're going to be using a lot of the art stuff in here, and you're just going to download the whole entire zip file. You can donate to Kenny. He's got a lot of great art assets that are open or that are available for you to use and prototype in. And we are going to just drag this folder and extract all straight to our desktop so that we have access to it. That's the first thing we're going to do, is prepare our art assets. And we're unzipping now. A lot of different pieces. They've got characters that are animated. We've got background art. We've got items. So a lot of useful stuff in here. And here we go. So it looks kind of like this. There's the license file right there. And we're going to be mostly working in the base pack today. And we're going to be working in the player folder, and in the tile folder, and in the enemy folder as well. And if you just want to take a look, if we just go in here, if we go into player, you can see lots of character sheets. Here is a player sprite sheet, which we'll talk about more later. But this is how we animate in Construct3. And we'll be going over some of that as well. So the stuff you're going to be doing is you are going to code the gameplay. You are going to create, or you're going to implement art and sound into your game. And at the end of it, you're going to have you're also going to develop any user interface implementation. User interface, or implement user interface, I should say. All right, so let's get going. So I have already got Construct3. I run Construct3 out of my desktop. You will find when you install Construct the first time that you can run it out of your desktop. I recommend that. We're just going to hit New Project. And for now, we're just going to keep all our viewport sizes standard. We'll change stuff up exactly the way we want it to be in a little bit. And we're just going to call this Yukon Mario 1-1 demo. And we're going to hit create. All right, so this is Construct3. Construct3 is a really powerful visual scripting engine. And on our menu here, we've got our main layout. This is the kind of the level, or where all the art goes in the game. Right now it looks just kind of like a big blank screen. I'm going to hold down Control and mouse wheel out a little bit just so I can zoom out because I want to get the view of this little dotted line here. This dotted line is our viewport into Construct. So this big square on the top left corner is the actual window that we're going to see the game through. Now, the rest of this whiteboard area is the actual terrain or gameplay area that you're allowed to that your player can run around inside. Right now, it's about 2 screen heights by 2 screen heights, which is our default settings. And we can actually change this up a bunch later on. For instance, if we wanted to, we could take this layout and make this 2048. And then, oops, here, let me undo that just so you can see the effect. So I'm going to increase the size of this, 2048. And there you go. We see you can increase the size. So that can be really good if you want to increase or decrease the gameplay size of where you're playing. And it allows you to put more detail and more level area into your game. So we've got layouts. We've also got here an event sheet. This is empty, and we'll come to this a little bit later, but this is where our scripting works. And as you can see in this example, we've got an example of visual scripting, and this is how all of it works. It's really great because it's very you're able to look at other people's code and really understand exactly how they did it, because the formatting is pretty consistent too, and it uses some graphics as well. And it's just very nice and helpful. And so we've got our layout, we've got our event sheet. And on our left-hand side is our properties window. Now, right now, we're just looking at the layout properties, but eventually we'll be looking at items and all that kind of objects inside the game that are also inside this specific layout. On our right-hand side, we've got our project window, and you can see that there are a bunch of different folders. One is for layouts, one is for event sheets, because these are separate objects that we can connect one event sheet to one layout. And then we've got objects, sounds, music, videos, fonts, icons, all that kind of fun stuff. So let's get going. I don't want to go too slow. And let us bring out our menu. And I just want to start getting some, where is it? So I just want to start figuring out, let's see if we need anything in settings. Just double click, check. Oh yeah, save and backup. So the other thing about the desktop build, which is really helpful, there is save and backup and periodically backup an active project. That would be really nice. I love autosave. So this is still in beta, but all software in development that's in development or any software that you use for development, it's going to crash sometimes. So we always want to update and save our stuff. Yeah, all right, we're good here. And I also want to use some of these here, show grid and snap to grid. So I'm going to hit show grid and snap to grid. These are really useful. And you'll notice that the grid size is 32 by 32. That's standard. It's a it's in binary, zeros and ones. So you've only got you've got multiples of 2. And so 32 by 32 is kind of our standard square tile. So we're going to insert our first object. Our first piece of artwork, and we're going to right-click anywhere in this layout area and insert a new object. And there's a bunch of different objects in here. We're going to ignore everything right now, scroll down, and find the sprite object. The sprite object is really great. Once you have the sprite, you see those crosshairs. You're going to click down, and you have now a blank canvas. It defaults to 125 by 125. We're going to go to the resize button, which is right here, Alt-R, and we are going to change this to 32 by 32. And because we don't need to pay attention to any of that. And now we've got a smaller box, and we're going to zoom in by holding down Control and mouse wheel. And then we are going to use the square and find just a kind of a brownish color, and just drag and drop, making a full square. So now we've just got a brown tile. This is going to be our ground tile in a second. But there's something else we have to do. In every single object, we have an image point. An image point is something that allows allows the computer to understand the beginning of where the point is and where to reference it from. So in this case, all our image points start dead center. Now, when we snap to grid, this is going to cause us a problem. So we want to put all of our ground tiles at the top left corner of our artwork. That's 0, 0. And that's also called origin point. We're just going to keep it up there, and that allows us to snap to our grid. So we're going to. So also in this art window, you've got our origin point. You've got your artwork. You've also noticed probably animation frames down here. We're going to use this later, animations and animation properties. So we're going to use that a little bit later. Going to hit close. And now we have a square box. Woo, super cool. This square box right now is called Sprite. So I'm going to rename this to ground because naming stuff is very, very useful, especially once you get more into it more. I suggest you name everything you create. And as you notice, you see this ground tile here. But one of the magic parts about video game development is referencing. So right now we have one object. And if I hit Control C, copy. If I hit Control C and Control V, and then click down again, you'll notice I created a second one, but I did not create a second ground tile. This is really helpful because we can reference the same object, and I'm going to do this a couple times. And we can make a lot of different bricks. And I'm just going to arrange these kind of on the bottom, on top of the dotted line, so that I can start creating a ground plane. And a half a screen width of ground plane. That should be good for now. And if I wanted to, I could change this artwork, and that's kind of the power. So we've got this artwork. I'm going to put like a little lighter path on the top, kind of like there's some terrain damage or something of that nature. Just going to pick the same brown and go a little lighter and just put it right up with the top right here. That kind of looks like light maybe or something of that nature. And I'm just going to hit close. There's no save. You don't have to save. This saving button will save the image to your hard drive or whatever, but it'll stay there. You just hit the close button. Nothing else matters. And there you go. See, every single tile now changed all at the same time. So that's the kind of the power and usefulness that we can do. And we can edit this one object and change it again. So let's press play. Every time we do anything in a game, a good habit to do is to press play and to see the game running in browser. So if I press play, here are our 4 squares, and here's a big white background, and here's the window, right? We said it was a half of a screen. That's it. Best video game ever. It displays a bunch of brown cubes. Let's get this a little bit more complicated. Let's create ourselves a player character. So this time we're going to right-click and insert something above the bricks if you can. It doesn't really matter, but you're going to insert a sprite. And this sprite is going to be called Player Box. And notice my camel casing, capital P, capital B. I usually do that. I usually use camel casing when I am using or when I'm writing, especially for compound words in programming. And I'm just going to click down. And this box is going to be fuchsia. Now, fuchsia is a magic color. Or magenta, excuse me, not fuchsia. Magenta is a magic color. Magenta is something that doesn't happen in nature very often and is really, 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 really helpful for us to get to notice when things are in the game that shouldn't necessarily be there. Now, you know, this does not help when you play Robot Unicorn Attack, of course, but for most games, most don't have pink or this magenta-y color. So we're going to fill this box with bright magenta. And then we're also going to change their origin point. Oh, actually, before we do the origin point, other thing we notice is the size, right? Right now, we've got a large size thing. We're going to resize this. Instead of 250 by 250, we're going to size this down to width of 32, like our normal cubes, and then a height of 64. Now, a height of 64 is 2 cubes tall, 32 plus 32, and generally is a standard ratio of measurement when we're dealing with game development. That's generally how tall a character is, and that's, or at least for me, I usually go in like half character height units of measurement. Sometimes we go much smaller than that, but usually for detail work. And that works for me on most side-scrolling games, you know, just 1 to 2. And now that we've got this, we're going to zoom in a little more because our box is a little bit smaller. And we're going to take this origin point. And again, see this origin point in the middle because it's default. Now, our character, we need to know where the feet of our character is, not the top left corner. So for characters, generally characters and enemies, we want to place the origin point at the bottom part of the of this area of this artwork, the player box. Now you'll see it's 16 by 64. I was able to click it. You may also change the numbers in here just as well. Either way works. Whatever you want to do. And we're going to put that on the bottom there. And we're going to press close. And now you'll see our character moves around and snaps. It's super great. Now that we've got this, let us press play. Because, again, anytime we do something, let's press play. Okay, we've got a character. It's floating over this floor. That's no good. Let's add some quick and dirty prototyping programming. We're going to go into we're going to select our player box, and we're going to go into the behaviors property on the left-hand side. And we're going to click and add new behavior. And the behavior we're looking for is called platform. It's right at the bottom. And all of these behaviors, all of them, but this one in particular, is a set of commands and code that we have access to if we add things to the behavior. So later on when we're coding, we're going to access the platform behavior and use a bunch of the stuff that is unique to platforming. So we're just going to hit add for now. And there we go. Now our character has platforming enabled. And I am going to hit play again. And watch what happens. Pew! I have a character, but he fell through the floor. The reason for that is the floor is there. It is artwork. It's visual. But we haven't told the computer whether or not it's solid yet, right? So adding another behavior to the ground tile this time. Add new behavior, add solid. Now we've got that solid behavior. And let's press play again. Bam. Now we land on the ground. And now we have a slightly more interesting game in which we can use the left and right buttons and jump up and down and jump up on our ground tile plane here. So getting closer. Now at least things work, right? So this is a good this is a good step. Let's remember to save because I haven't yet. And we're going to just save, let's see, let's save to Google Drive. And I'm just logging into my Google account. And it's thinking about it. And save it is. All right, great, awesome. So now it's saving up to my Google account, making sure that everything is nice and safe. So now that we've done that, let's do a little bit more work on the background. So we have these art assets, and they're great, Kenny's art assets, and we're going to want to bring them into the game. So we're going to insert a new object by right-clicking on the area, insert new object, and we're going to insert a sprite. And this tile is, or this sprite is going to be called Castle, or BG, or sorry, BG Castle. And this one I'm prefixing and using an underscore. Feel free to do it however you want, but because Kenny has a lot of art assets and they're named things, I'm just using BG Castle, so it'll be quick to sort. It's also in there, so you know, it's up to you. And I'm just gonna click somewhere. And now this time I'm not going to draw, right? I'm not a great artist, and I don't have enough time to make all the art in my game and all the code and all the sounds and all the gameplay. So what I'm going to do is import some of Kenny's art assets. To do this, let's import one frame first. So we're going to hit open, or load an image from file, and we are going to go to Kenny's platformer art assets and the base pack. And we're going to go to tiles. And we're going to find ourselves castle tile. There we go. So, and we're going to do the same. We're going to do the same thing here, where we're going to put the origin point in the top left. And we're also going to check out one important aspect, and this is something about Kenny's art assets that I'm not sure why he did this, but you'll notice that this is, if we look down here, 70 by 70. So one of the things about this is it's a little bit bigger than 64 by 64, which kind of messes up our measurements a little bit. You know, what should we do with this, right? Like, it doesn't fit our cube thing. We could change the artwork. We could resize the artwork if we wanted to. But in this case, we're going to keep it at 70 by 70 because we want the most visual fidelity we can out of the artwork. But we're going to, and now that the origin point's up on top, I'm going to hit close, and as you can see, the artwork is pretty big. And I'm going to just zoom in here. a little bit, and it doesn't fit our lines. So what we're going to do in this case is we're going to just use the resizing square, and we are going to change the size of the artwork to fit our 64 by 64. And if we were going to duplicate this again, we could also, now because the artwork has stayed large, we can also resize our artwork and maybe use a smaller one, and they'll look at least similar, and we won't lose fidelity. Now, we can't do this as well with bigger items. This may work a little bit, but it's vector art, but you'll start to see a lot of issues. As you go bigger, it gets, see the little the fuzziness? It gets fuzzier. So, and we can't really do this bigger than the artwork, but we can always go smaller. So we're gonna create this, and again, we have to add a behavior. And the new behavior is gonna be solid again. And now we have our square castle our square castle blocks. So where do we go from here? We could add every single box or every single block that Kenny has. He has over 100, right? Over 1,000, and we can make every single object a separate tile. I don't recommend this. Now there are something called a tiled tile map or a tile background. Now you do not. They are useful and they're great for getting really big expanses of stuff done. I am not looking to do that right now, so I'm not really interested in these. But for our sprite thing, this has been my technique that I really like to do. So we're gonna reopen up Kenny's art, this BG castle, and right now we have frame 0, which is animation frame, right? And what we're gonna do is, instead of, we can't keep loading, or we could, that would be very boring and irritating. Instead of loading one file at a time, we're gonna go down to the animation frames area and right click here, add frame, or excuse me, not add frame, delete that. And you're gonna right click here and you're gonna say import frames from files. And that brings up our tile area. Now, we already have castle. I'm not going to click on that, but I'm going to click castle center as the first one. And then I am going to scroll down. We've got castle right, castle ledge left. All this stuff gets put together. I'm going to hold down shift. I'm going to left click on castle right. And now you can see I have selected all these items. And I'm going to hit open. And you should have 19 frames of art. You may have 20 frames, because 0 is also a frame. Now you may have 21. That might mean that frame 0 is blank or white. That happens sometimes. Just delete the white frame, and you'll be good. So again, anytime we do something, let's close, save, press play, check it out. Ooh, look at that, an animating floor. That's not very walkable. So what we have to do is also turn off the animation. So we're going to just take the speed, which is 5 frames a second, and I'm going to hit 0. That means it's 0 frames a second, which means it never changes. Which means whatever object, whichever frame the art is on, that's what it's on. So I'm going to close that, and I am going to then go in and take a look at down here. See this initial frame in our properties window of this brick? Right now initial frame is 0, but let's say I wanted to have maybe like a different piece. Maybe I think it's a ramp or something. It's not 15, I think it's 13. Yeah, there we go, a ramp. So if I wanted a ramp coming downwards, I could just merely take my artwork and go down here and change the initial frame to be 13. Or maybe I want this to be a big floor piece, right? So I'm going to make this artwork 12. Or not 12, excuse me. Let's just cycle through them. There we go. Maybe I want this big piece here. So, and now if we notice there's a seam here, I'm just going to change this because there is another brick that's just nicer. But let's do like a left ramp. How about that? So I think that's 15. No, it's 11. Ooh, check this out. See how this object is still origin pointed in the center? That's because we did not change the origin point for all of them. We just changed the origin point for the first frame. And that's something very common that'll happen. I'll catch you up. It caught me up. So what I'm going to do is select my frame 0, which I have my origin point at 0, 0. And origin point's over here. I'm going to right click. I'm going to apply to whole animation. Now, every single box is exactly the same. So that's going to be really good. The second thing I'm going to do is let's take a look at collision. So if we take a look at collision on frame 1, to do this, let me scroll down. It's this button here, right underneath the origin point button. Edit the collision polygon. So the collision polygon is the places on this piece, on this frame of artwork where you can touch and collide with and be solid with a part of the brick. Now, for the ramp, we don't want all of this area. If we go down here, this is all empty area. So if the player walks into this, this will feel like an invisible wall. In this case, it's a really easy fix. We're going to select the top left corner of the collision polygon, and we're going to hit delete. Oop, undo. That deleted my animation frame by accident. Come on, click there. And right-click, delete. And there we go. Now we have a nice smooth line. It's corner to corner. I'm going to do that for the other ramp as well, just so we have it. Now, you should, at some point, maybe do collision for other stuff as needed. Maybe you want to make this ramp off a little bit better, but this is kind of like an edge case. Only like 10% of people might be running into this at a day, every day. So it's up to you how much time you want to spend on editing. And also, for some reason, frame 0 always gets messed up like this. We just want the nice, even, oops, again I deleted it. We just want nice, even, four-sided polygons for our collision right now. So I'm just going to adjust that as well. All right, so hit close and bring that piece up there. Now what will happen is, and I should have probably shown an example, but we'll walk up and we'll walk up the ramp. Boop, right there. So, and I'll just show you the example. I apologize for not showing it before, but if the ramp had more polygons, guess the polygon, oops, undo. Dun, dun, dun. Add point. So if we had this like this, and then we pressed play, you'll see that we run into the brick, and then we stand on top of it, and that's no good. So just delete that again. Now you've seen it twice. All right, so now we've got our background brick. Let's get some artwork onto our character. The first thing we're going to start with Mario from Mario's big state. That way we can then move down to the small state, and also because our sizes of our characters are the right sizes. So let's import and create a new create a new object. This one's going to be called player, or yeah, we're going to be called player. We're going to make this a sprite as well, and we're going to click anywhere. And this time we're going to right-click, import frames from files. We're going to go to base pack of Kenny's art assets and go to player. And this player, the first frame that we want to do is P1 stand. And as you notice, there's actually 2 frames now. So I'm going to just delete frame 0. And there we go, P1 stand. And for our player 1, right now our animation is animation 1. And our, let's start with origin point. Let's change the origin point. All origin points have to be at the bottom for our characters. And this is actually a 66 by 92 piece of artwork. Again, we're going to keep it the same size, the larger item frame. And we are going to make this 33. The origin point needs to be 33 by 92, right at the bottom, right in the middle. So I messed up when I clicked a little bit, so I just changed it in there. And this animation 1, all of the default animations are called, default in the industry is called idle, I-D-L-E. Idle is when you're just standing around. And this is the default animation that you're probably going to run across, and the word for the default animation you're going to run across in the industry, at least from my experience. So we're going to do a couple other animations. Let's right-click and add an animation. And this one we're going to rename as walk. And if you notice, I'm using lower cases, and that's appropriate. So let's import frames from files, and walk is under P1 walk. It's also got a sprite sheet if you prefer to do it this way, but I prefer to import it from files. It's got a couple sprite sheets. So P1 walk, all the way, hold down left click, walk 01, all the way to walk 11. And now I import that. I'm going to delete the frame 0. And oh boy, look at the origin points different again. Instead of going back and forth and clicking them all, I'm going to go back to idle. I'm gonna mess with that at the end, but I'm gonna go back to idle and right click and hit apply to all animations. But let's fix the rest of the animations first. But let's watch this one. Oops. So right now we've got something that runs a little bit, so that's great. But the speed right now is kind of slow, so I'm gonna increase this to 12 or 10 frames a second. And then we're going to loop it as well, because when we're walking, we're probably walking forever and ever. That's actually also true about idle, is idle is also going to loop. So we've got idle and walk. Now we've also going to add another sub-event, or not a sub-event, excuse me, another animation. Import frames from files, and go to player 1 jump, P1 jump. And rename and call this jump. Add animation, import frames from files, P1 hurt, and we're going to call this death. Now, for death, we don't actually have an animation for death, so we're going to create it. We're going to add or duplicate some frames. So right-click on our frame of this very unhappy little alien guy, duplicate, and now we've got 2 frames of the same size. We're going to use the marquee tool, also called rectangle select in this editor, and just select everything, and then I'm going to just drag the character down like... Here, if we zoom in a little bit, it'll be easier. We're going to drag it down like 2 or 3 of these background squares. There we go. And then we're going to hit enter, or not enter. We're going to click off to make the rectangle go away, and then that'll set the artwork to down more. We're going to do this again. Duplicate. And then drag it down. Excuse me. And duplicate again. So just so that we have like a very visible kind of death kind of animation. But that's only going to play right at the end of the level anyway. And in fact, we'll probably have to replace that a little bit because it's only when the little Mario dies, typically, unless you are jumping into the death pit. So now we have our animation. Oh, one more thing. We did not change the origin point yet. So go to origin point, select idle, and right-click on origin point and apply to all animations. Now that'll change the origin point on everything, which is great. Good. Hit closed. All right, now that you've got this, let's press play. That was a lot of animation, but nothing's going to change, right? Except that now that there's some art assets here. Oh, one other thing is, I love idle animations that move. Right now, this animation is 1 frame, so we're just going to make this 2 frames as well. Idle, duplicate, and we're going to just shift the top of his head, or the top of its head and body down a little bit, so it looks like it's breathing. And then it looks like there's a little edge there. I'm just going to clean that up, because, you know, I can. Oh, wait, that's a square. Oh, that's right, it's a pencil. So we're just going to hide that a little bit. There we go. Ooh. Oops, sorry about that. I have now just zoomed to a new thing. Let's close that. Oh boy. Save. I have to no, I don't have to reload. Good. Let's press play, and now it just we'll probably be able to see that animate. There you go. that animation is now playing. Good. Now we know that the game's running at all times. Idle animations are great because if the game crashes, then it'll stop and you'll know that your game has crashed. Very helpful in debugging. But right now, what we need to do is take this artwork and we need to put it on top of this player box, because the player box is like the soul of the character. And then this player object, this is just the wrapping. Sometimes we want the player to be this player, but maybe we want to change the artwork, right, to Mario, a littler Mario. So we are going to just attach this object to this piece. So let's go to our event sheet and add an event. Now these are all the objects in the scene. System is kind of our catch-all. We're going to go into system. And we're going to say, and these are all the commands that you can do right now. And we're going to say every tick. A tick, by the way, is every time the computer processes something. So we're going to hit every tick. Every time the computer does anything, add action, player, set position to another object. And then this is one of the nice things about the visual scripting language here, is we can click here to choose the object. In this case, we're going to select player box as the object, and image point is 0. But if we also notice up here, you can see it's called the expressions dictionary. It's kind of grayed out. You don't always notice it, but this is also a great window for you to get at all the data in your game real quick. So just be aware of that. But we're just going to hit done. And now we have this visual thing. It says system, every tick, player, set position to player box, image point 0. This is also very legible, right? We can read this and we can tell someone it. It's easy to mark up. So let's play. There we go. Now we have artwork that attaches to our character, or to our soul, our player box. But it still needs a little work. It still needs a lot of work in order to get everything running, but I think we can do that. So let us start in on some of that. So first thing we should do is we should figure out how to change it going back and forth so that when you press left, that the artwork flips over. So we're going to, first we're going to create a group. And this group, if you right click anywhere on this lighter gray area and add group, you can create any groups you want. And we're going to create a group called player. And active on start, you definitely want that to be true. Now inside this group, this is the way we stay organized. Later on, we're going to have many, many, many scripts, and we want to be able to sort through them. So now that we've got this, we're going to add an event to player. And, actually, no, we have to do something first. So what we need to do is access the keyboard. Now, I have forgotten to add the keyboard to the game. Yep, you actually have to add the keyboard. But if you go to your layout and you right-click anywhere you want, insert new object, you can insert a gamepad, a keyboard, a mouse, or touch screen commands. Now, what this does is it just unlocks all the commands that allow you to access these objects. Now, why doesn't it just start up that way? Well, maybe you don't need a keyboard. Maybe it's a gamepad only game or mouse only game, or it's a phone game, right? So so not all of these are necessary until we need them. So we're just going to add a keyboard, standard name, keyboard, insert, and it's available right here, but that's it. The only time you ever have to deal with that. So go back to your event sheet, add event, and this time we're going to say we're going to say keyboard on key is down, or on key pressed, and we're going to click on the key to press. In this case, it's going to be left, and to do that, I'm just going to hit my keyboard. There you go. If you type in other stuff, F, G, H, J, it will change. And we're going to hit OK. And then we're just going to, I'm going to click right here and hit Control C, Control V, and copy paste. And I'm going to make the other event. I'm going to double click it. And I just can change the one thing. Left arrow is now right arrow. Like that. All right. So now we've got these two things. It says like when your left arrow is pressed or your right arrow is pressed, do something. So first we've got, and what we want to do is say, which way are you looking at? And when you're looking at a certain direction, then do these things. So in order to do that, we have to keep track of what direction the player is facing. So we're going to select player box, and we are going to select, and see this instance variables area, we're going to add an instance variable. And this instance variable is going to be a string. And a string, there's three kinds: Boolean, number, and string. A Boolean is yes or no, true or false. It's 0 or 1. It's something that is often called a flag when we're working in games. A number is any number with a decimal point, not a decimal point. If you're familiar with coding, this is an integer or a float value. They're both in there. They're just handled as the same object. And string is a word that is then parsed into code later on. Now, strings are also, at least I come from the world of Game Boy Advanced and DS, so oftentimes we don't code in strings. It's very, but I'm going to be coding a lot of stuff in strings for you guys today. But usually we don't do it in like in bigger game engines because it's just it takes up some extra resources for programming. So string, and we're going to name this one facing. An initial value is going to be right, because in most games we always face to the right. By most games, I mean most games ever, at least the side scrollers, we always start on the left-hand side of the screen and go to the right. I'm not sure why. Maybe that's a cultural thing. So our initial value is right, and that's just lowercase r-i-g-h-t. Now we're going to add an action to these keyboard events we created. On left key pressed, we're going to add an action, and then we're going to say player box set value of facing. Now this time we have to use quotes because we're putting a value in. So we have and values could be 0, or it could be a word, right? Like player. And if you notice, see all this stuff that comes up? This is the player. And you can access things that the player has, like angle and that kind of stuff. We'll talk about that later. But to put the value in here, you have to put it in quotes if you're doing a string. No quotes over here in the properties window. Quotes over here. It's kind of confusing, but it's okay. And the value is going to be left. And I'm going to do that again. Add action, player box, set value, facing to right. Because on key press right, go right. Oh, excuse me. See, it even told me that there is no such thing. I have to put it in quotes. I forgot. All right, so now that we have left and right, we need to be able to recognize what happens when we are going left and right. So what we're going to do is add another, because if we just press play now and we go left, right, or left and right, nothing happens. But here's a great thing to check. If we close this, and instead of hitting normal play preview, go to debug layout and hit try again. And here's a lot of cool stats. Now if we select our player box, which is the thing that has that instance variable, remember when we said facing? This is the instance variable facing. And now we can watch this and watch it go right and left. And it'll change in here, which is really useful for debugging purposes. So we know it's working. It's just the artwork doesn't change yet because we haven't told it to. So now we're going to add a listener event. And this listener event is going to listen for command changes in facing. So player box, we're going to add a condition, say player box, compare instance variable, facing, and what we want to say is, what happens if facing is equal to left? Or what happens when player box, compare instance variable, facing is equal to right? What happens when those are the case? So for now, we're going to add action to the player box facing left, and we're going to go to the player this time, and we're going to do something to the player. We're going to mirror it. set mirrored. See the appearance? Set mirrored. If you have trouble finding some of this stuff, you can also just use the search bar, mirror, mirrored. You can just find all that stuff there. Set state to done. And set mirrored, copy, paste, and I'm just going to drag this down to the, oops, no I'm not. I'm going to hit add action, player, set mirrored to state not mirrored. And so this mirror not mirrored thing, right? Mirrored means I'm reflected from what I was before. Not mirrored means I am in my original state, which is facing right. Now, it's a little weird, but that's programmer-wise, programmer-ease, that's the way you want to say it. You want to say it as a negative. So if we hit play now, you go right, you go left. Hey, look at that. The character moves back and forth. That's very cool. So we're going to take that opportunity to save. And I'm also going to double check my video capturing system just for a second and just start up the next bit.